The appearance of a mysterious and brutal deep-sea monster inevitably brings terrifying, bloody, and violent scenes of devouring. The story takes place in a deep trench in the South China Sea, a place beyond the reach of humans or machines. For hundreds of years, countless ships have mysteriously disappeared here. From the camera's perspective, the wreckage of these ships is shown as if the monster is reminiscing about its prey from years ago. At this moment, in the dark depths of the ocean, the world's most luxurious cruise ship is slowly sailing into the unknown on a stormy night. Half of the world's rich are gathered on this ship, indulging in a life of luxury and debauchery. But little do they know, a terrifying apex predator from the deep sea is closing in on them. At this point, a sexy woman appears. She lightly bumps into Captain Atherton and skillfully steals his wallet. It turns out she is a famous international thief, and she boarded this cruise ship with the intent of stealing expensive watches and necklaces. Just as she manages to get her hands on a priceless jewelry necklace, before she can celebrate, Captain Atherton, along with security personnel, catches her red-handed. As it turns out, her identity as an international thief had already been leaked to Captain Atherton when she boarded the ship. The security guards then lock her in the food storage room, unknowingly saving Trillian's life in the process. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure appears in the ship's main control room. He tampers with the ship's operating system, causing all communications and power systems to completely shut down. At this moment, the bridge is in chaos, and everyone is panicking because all communication systems have failed. The cruise ship is now like a blind person walking across a busy road. While everyone is anxious, the pilot makes a horrifying discovery. The only working radar shows an unidentified creature rapidly approaching them from the depths. There is no time to avoid it. Suddenly, a monstrous roar is heard, and with a loud crash, the propeller is destroyed by the unknown creature. What kind of monster could overturn a 10-story high super cruise ship? Passengers in the main hull fall from the upper floors, landing in a chaotic heap. The violent shaking causes the lifeboats to drop into the sea. When the cruise ship finally stabilizes, a strange screeching sound echoes through the hall, immediately filling every passenger with fear. The well-dressed passengers, who just moments ago were enjoying a party of music and dance, are now frantically fleeing through the maze-like ship. Chaos ensues as people trample over each other, and at least 5 or 6 people are crushed to death. One woman, not wanting to be trampled, smartly hides in a bathroom, trembling with fear. She believes she is safe, but then strange noises start coming from inside the bathroom, leaving her terrified and confused. Just then, a terrifying scene unfolds. A powerful suction force emerges from the toilet, grabbing hold of her body. In the next second, the woman sitting on the toilet is pulled alive into the sewer. Meanwhile, a small boat is speeding through the stormy sea, not far from the cruise ship. On board are a group of mercenaries from around the world. Though they appear friendly, they are actually ruthless criminals. In the cabin, John, amidst his busy schedule, takes a moment to use the radar display to engage in a game with the shipowner. John is an experienced captain, often active in these waters. Today, he has taken on a big job, tasked with helping a group of mercenaries transport expensive cargo. However, John immediately recognizes that they are not good people. Still, he understands the rules of this business. As long as the money is good, there are no questions asked. So, he doesn't pry. But Joey, on board, grows curious about the mercenaries' true intentions. He sneaks into the cargo hold and opens one of their crates. To his shock, the crates are full of torpedoes. This discovery gives the mechanic an ominous feeling, and before he can process it, the mercenaries catch him in the act. Realizing that their secret is out, the mercenaries drop their pretense and beat Joey savagely. For the bored mercenaries, it becomes a source of amusement. John's assistant urges him to intervene. Luckily, John steps in, armed with a sharp gun, but the mercenaries are tough and show no fear, treating John as though he's irrelevant. This situation reveals that John is a force to be reckoned with. Yet the atmosphere aboard the ship quickly grows tense. Since the mercenaries still need a captain, their leader gives a warning and spares them for now. John resumes steering the small boat, but the mercenaries aren't willing to take any risks. They all suit up with top-level gear. Suddenly, John notices an obstacle ahead on the radar. Before he can avoid it, they crash. What they hit turns out to be a lifeboat that fell from the cruise ship, causing the engine to catch fire. Realizing the severity of the situation, both sides set aside their grievances and work together to put out the fire. Fortunately, the violent impact does not ignite the torpedoes. Otherwise, everyone would have become history. However, the ship sustains a large hole, the engine is severely damaged, and fuel begins to leak. Worse yet, they have no spare parts on board. Just when they are at their wits' end, they spot a luxurious cruise ship in the distance that has stopped moving. The mercenaries quickly spring into action and seize control. John finally understands that the mercenaries' mission is to rob this cruise ship. They dock their small boat alongside the cruise ship and use specialized grappling hooks to board with ease. In search of parts to repair the boat, John and his crew are forced to board as well, leaving only the female assistant and a mercenary behind to work on repairs. Unbeknownst to everyone, their nightmare is just beginning. The fully armed mercenaries, after organizing their tactics, enthusiastically shout their slogans of getting rich. Just as they are about to begin their mission, they open the door to the main hall, only to find it completely empty, with chaos everywhere. Even more bizarre is the presence of bloodstains all over the hall, including inside the elevators. It seems as though someone else has already looted the place before them, but the strange thing is, where are the bodies? They head to the deck to investigate, only to find that all the lifeboats are still in place. Then they proceed to the ship's entertainment area, only to find it as deserted as the main hall. With no one in sight, the group is left completely baffled. To figure out what's happening, the captain decides to split up. He sends 2 men to escort John and Joey to find parts to repair the ship, while the others go to search for the cruise ship's vault. The scene shifts to the female assistant left on the small boat, working on repairs when she suddenly senses something is wrong. The next moment, a pale corpse floats to the surface, scaring the assistant terribly. Beneath the dark, foreboding ocean, a terrifying threat is lurking. Meanwhile, Trillian, who had been locked in the food storage room, narrowly escapes death. She wakes up from unconsciousness to find everything around her in disarray. Unsure of what happened, suddenly, she hears a monster freely moving through the narrow ducts. Terrifying her, she pulls out a hairpin and successfully sabotages the lock on the door, allowing her to escape the storage room. Still determined, she heads to the vault, hoping to steal back the priceless necklace, but she's spotted by the mercenaries, who have just arrived. The captain walks up and roughly grabs her by the throat, demanding to know where everyone on the ship has gone. Trillian, still completely confused, knows nothing and has no answers. One of the captain's companions isn't concerned about anything else. Making money is his top priority. At this point, the vault door slowly opens, and the mercenaries are filled with anticipation, but they are greeted not by riches but by a deadly fire axe. Panic ensues as the man inside swings wildly, terrified to death while those outside are equally scared. In the chaos, they open fire, turning the man inside into a bloody mess. Simon and his deputy, hiding deeper inside the vault, manage to escape unharmed. The mercenaries are furious over the death of their comrade, but they don't kill the person responsible to avenge him. It turns out Simon has an unusual relationship with them. Simon, panicked, insists there's a terrifying monster on the ship and that they must leave immediately. Seizing the opportunity, Trillian sneaks away unnoticed. Meanwhile, as John and his crew search for parts, one of the mercenaries hears a strange noise nearby. Out of curiosity, he goes to investigate, completely unaware that his life is ticking away. When he reaches the source of the sound, he finds nothing unusual. However, as he wonders what's going on, a large bubble suddenly rises from the water, catching his attention. In an instant, the mercenary dies a mysterious death. Another mercenary quickly points his gun at John and Joey, suspecting they were behind the attack. He immediately reports the situation to the captain. With the captain's permission, he prepares to kill John and Joey to avenge his comrade. But before he can fire, a powerful force drags him into the water. 2 mercenaries fall victim to the unknown creature, yet John and Joey haven't even caught a glimpse of it. They can only retreat in terror, desperately firing and dodging, as the unidentified creature charges from beneath the floor. John and Joey barely escape by shutting a door just in time, temporarily putting themselves out of danger. When the 2 reach the elevator, they run into Trillian, who is also trying to escape. As John tries to calm Trillian down, the sounds of the monster echo above the elevator. Suddenly, the elevator doors open, and John and the others are confronted by a group of mercenaries blocking the way. The captain, furious, accuses John of killing his men. John quickly explains that they were attacked by an unknown monster. Luckily, Simon's deputy backs up John's story, confirming the existence of a terrifying creature unlike anything they've ever seen. However, the captain remains skeptical, not believing such a tale. Suddenly, the elevator shakes violently, loses control, and plunges to the bottom level. Fortunately, no one is injured. As they escape the elevator, the group is horrified by what they see. The walls are splattered with blood, and piles of mangled, half-eaten bones are scattered everywhere, filling everyone with fear. The monster seems to have sensed their presence. At the end of the hallway, A door begins to bend and twist under tremendous pressure, followed by the walls on either side. Just as the monster is about to break through and charge at them, it suddenly stops. John and the mercenary captain, guns in hand, gather their courage and approach cautiously. It seems the monster is aware of their approach, and everything goes eerily quiet. Suddenly, someone steps on a skull, causing the monster to be startled and launch a ferocious attack. John and the captain unleash a barrage of gunfire, desperately trying to suppress the monster. Fortunately, the creature is unable to break through the thick steel. Though it howls in frustration, everyone retreats to a relatively safe storage room. As Trillian prepares to change clothes, Simon's deputy tries to send a distress signal. However, the deputy informs them that the monster has destroyed the communication system from the outside. John then claims that he had tried to contact the cruise ship earlier, but the communication was suddenly cut off. He suspects that someone on board sabotaged the system. John connects the dots and accuses Simon of being the one who sabotaged the system, pointing out that Simon and the mercenary captain clearly know each other. Under pressure from the group, Simon finally confesses the truth. It turns out he is the owner of the cruise ship. He spent all his savings to build it, but the cost of maintaining the ship far exceeded the construction costs. Unable to cover his debts, Simon and the mercenaries conspired to rob the cruise ship and stage it as a shipwreck to collect a massive insurance payout. However, their plan was derailed by the unexpected arrival of the monster. Simon's deputy, unaware of the plot, is furious. Just then, a few drops of slimy liquid land on Joey. He turns around, suspiciously looking up. It is here that the monster reveals a small part of itself for the first time. Everyone stares in shock as a thick tentacle writhes through the pipes. Seeing this, John immediately opens fire on the monster's tentacle. The creature regurgitates a partially digested human, who is still alive. Terrifyingly, the man stands up and turns his head, revealing only half of his brain remaining. He lifts his hand, which is riddled with holes from being corroded, and lets out a blood-curdling scream. The horrifying sight leaves everyone drenched in cold sweat as they nervously fire at the creature. Though their firepower manages to suppress the monster temporarily, it doesn't cause significant harm. Realizing they are outmatched, everyone panics and flees in all directions. Trillian finds John, who appears to be a straightforward man, and begs him to take her with him when they escape on his small boat. She offers to give John anything he wants. Just as Trillian smiles, the terrifying tentacle strikes again. The tentacle, although without eyes, is highly sensitive to sound. Just as John is about to grab his gun, the monster locks onto him, opening its sharp mouth, ready to devour him. John is so terrified that his legs go weak. No matter how he retreats, the monster remains close behind him, like a shadow. At the critical moment, Trillian steps forward with a gun, bravely shooting at the monster and finally driving it back, saving John just in time. Meanwhile, Simon's deputy, who is left alone, is also attacked by the monster. He pleads for Simon, who is ahead of him, to save him, but Simon is too frightened to act. Just then, John and Trillian arrive and offer a helping hand, trying to pull him up. However, the monster's strength is too overwhelming, and they can only watch as he becomes the creature's meal. At this point, Simon explains to the others, providing some scientific context. The creature is a type of soft-bodied organism called otatwa, which existed millions of years ago and typically lived at depths of 4,000 feet. They could grow to the size of a pencil, with their main body being no bigger than a golf ball. However, those that lived at depths below 20,000 feet grew large enough to swallow an adult shark whole. If they lived below 100,000 feet, it's impossible to imagine just how big they could get. In other words, the larger the environment, the larger they grew. The scariest part is that this monster is particularly cunning, almost elusive, lurking in the darkness and patiently waiting for its prey. Once it strikes from the shadows, it attacks with the ferocity of a hungry tiger, delivering a deadly blow. Realizing that if this continues, everyone will be eaten by the monster, John suggests they return to the ship, fix it, and escape. However, the only exit is now completely submerged underwater. To confirm if the passage is still viable, John calls on the captain and another mercenary to scout ahead, while the others wait. But before long, the waiting group encounters the monster. Seeing the creature charging at them, Joey quickly closes the door, holding off the beast for as long as possible. However, in the next second, the monster breaks through. The lone black man, struggling to swim forward, is suddenly grabbed by the monster in the water. Knowing he won't survive, he decisively detonates a grenade, Taking the monster down with him, the few remaining survivors make it to the kitchen, but after so many terrifying encounters, they immediately begin to argue. John decides to fight his way back to the ship. However, the captain's men are too scared to take any more risks. They insist on staying and waiting for rescue. As they argue, the monster, seemingly growing impatient, decides to make the choice for them. The others look panicked and quickly make their decision. Everyone wears an expression of fear, not daring to make a sound. But one man, determined to fight for his life, suddenly opens fire, unleashing his long-held rage. While he's busy, the others seize the chance to escape, leaving him to face the terrifying creature alone. Fortunately, the monster is caught off guard and flees through the ventilation ducts. Feeling emboldened after driving the creature back, the man decides not to run with the others. However, in the very next moment, the man is swallowed by the monster. Meanwhile, John's group is desperately fleeing for their lives, but the monster is relentless in its pursuit, blocking multiple exits and leading them with only one route. It seems the monster is herding them toward the bow of the ship with a purpose. If the monster is this intelligent, what could be waiting for them at the bow? At this point, Simon directs them down a certain path, but sneaks off through a side door when they aren't looking. John and the others are eventually driven into the grand hall, which has now become the monster's personal dining room. Everywhere they look, they see piles of bones and heaps of bloody flesh, an ocean of death. Frozen in terror, they finally realize what happened to all the passengers on the ship. Simon, knowing more than the others, did not follow them. Sensing its prey, the monster bursts through the ship's hull, flooding the hull with seawater. The group is forced to run for their lives again, as water quickly pours into the ship. During their escape, they spot Simon, who has sinister plans to use John and the others as bait to slow the monster down, abandoning them once more. As massive waves flood the ship, the group splits into 3 teams in their frantic escape. The captain and Joey manage to kill a monster with the last 2 grenades they have. Joey quickly throws one of them, and as the creature charges at them, there is a deafening explosion, and its tentacle is blown to pieces. Before they can catch their breath, another monster begins to chase them. In a desperate move, the captain sacrifices himself to hold off the monster, allowing Joey to hide in an elevator and escape. Limping into a nearby room, Joey sits down to catch his breath, only to be startled when a large hand grabs him. It turns out the captain had been fatally wounded, his body half devoured by the monster. He can feel his flesh being painfully digested but is powerless to stop it. Despite the captain's earlier betrayal, Joey generously hands him a gun, allowing him to end his suffering. But as the captain pulls the trigger, he discovers the gun is out of bullets. Meanwhile, John and Trillian, after facing numerous dangers together, finally make it to the deck. John suddenly realizes he's lost the ship's repair parts but spots an island in the distance and formulates a new plan. They use the elevator to return to their boat. However, the small boat's fuel tank is badly damaged, and there's not enough fuel left for an escape. John instructs Trillian to return to the cruise ship and find the keys to the speedboat so they can escape to the island. John returns to the boat, placing a torpedo at the bow and setting the small boat on a collision course with the cruise ship. His plan is to blow up the entire ship and take the monsters with it. Meanwhile, Trillian finally finds the keys to the speedboat. Before she can celebrate, Simon appears unexpectedly. He threatens Trillian, demanding she hand over the keys, promising to take her with him to safety. With no choice, Trillian hands over the keys, but once Simon has them, he plans to kill her to cover his tracks. At the critical moment, John appears, heroically rescuing Trillian. However, instead of killing Simon, John shoots at him to scare him off. But just then, a deafening roar echoes through the hall, and the entire cruise ship begins to shake violently. Moments later, the monster finally reveals its true form. It turns out this deep-sea behemoth has a head as large as a small hill, resembling a gigantic octopus in appearance. As John and Trillian try to gather themselves and sneak away, the monster launches an attack on John, wrapping him in its tentacle and lifting him into the air. The tentacle, like a sea serpent lined with sharp teeth, is both cunning and ferocious. John struggles desperately to break free, but his efforts are in vain. As the monster opens its tooth-filled maw, it glares menacingly at the small human with its dim, ghostly eyes. John quickly pulls out his shotgun and fires, blowing out one of the monster's eyes. The creature lets out a gut-wrenching scream of pain and drops John. Now enraged, John grabs his shotgun and fires repeatedly, catching the monster off guard with a barrage of shots. Seizing the opportunity, John and Trillian escape, leaving the monster to bellow in frustration. Meanwhile, The fleeing Simon spots John's small boat already powered up and ready to leave. In his panic to board, he leaps from the cruise ship, only to break his leg upon landing. Enduring immense pain, Simon painstakingly crawls into the cockpit, wearing a grin of relief, thinking he's survived. However, he quickly realizes that the small boat has been set to autopilot with a collision course towards the cruise ship, and there's no way to manually override it. At this moment, John and Trillian are casually riding a jet ski, preparing to escape, but when they see the monster blocking the exit, they are terrified and have no choice but to flee toward another way out. Despite being injured, the enraged monster relentlessly chases after them. John is forced to engage in a fierce chase with the monster, firing back as they race to escape. Meanwhile, the torpedo-laden boat gets closer and closer to the cruise ship. Simon frantically tries to change the boat's course but is powerless to do so. Helpless, he watches in despair as the small boat speeds toward the cruise ship. In a deafening explosion, the torpedo detonates, destroying the cruise ship in an instant. John and Trillian manage to escape the ship just in time, but the monster isn't so lucky as the entire cruise ship is blown apart. The creature is ripped to pieces in the blast. The world's most luxurious cruise ship is consumed by flames and reduced to ashes. However, beneath the crashing waves, many unknown deep-sea monsters continue to lurk. John and Trillian finally make it to an uninhabited island. As they gaze at the beautiful scenery, thinking about spending the rest of their lives here together, they are shocked to discover that Joey is still alive. As the three of them begin to discuss how to make a life for themselves on the island, a terrifying roar suddenly echoes from the depths of the island, shattering their daydream. In the next moment, entire sections of the forest are wiped out, and the film abruptly ends. I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.